Hello, guys and gals. Good to see you again. Coming to you here from the UK, Adrian Sellers representing the Royal Enfield Custom Program. This week, we've got a very exciting visitor going to Vietnam with Daryl from Bandit 9 Motors. How's it going, Daryl?
Hey, guys. What's up?
We're doing good here.
Happy
How's
to
things for you? How are you managing this the craziness in the world today?
All good, all good. I think, I don't know if you guys have heard, but Vietnam's pretty lucky. The cases have been managed pretty well, yeah. And we're slowly starting to open up again, so almost back to normal.
Nice. I heard you even have traffic on the roads there. This is pretty exciting. You know, in the UK, we don't actually have traffic yet, you know, so it's the commute's still pretty
That's
easy.
true, man. That's true. I
So have you
can't.
been keeping busy?
Yeah, we've been pretty busy, actually. Even during the lockdown, I was trying to figure out how to bring everything kind of back in-house. So we've been quite busy, busier than normal. And now that the lockdown is over, we have to find a way to disseminate everything back again. So it's not that,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if you could introduce yourself a little bit, tell us how you got to where you are now, the rise of Bandit 9, and where does Bandit 9, the name, come from? It's a cool name, but I'm guessing there's something behind that.
Yeah, we started in 2011, actually. I was in Beijing at the time, and I was still moonlighting with an advertising job. And I don't know how it came about, really. I guess I was just sick and tired of the advertising scene, you know, and I just wanted to do something I really enjoyed doing. So that's how I started Bandit 9. The idea actually came to me much earlier, but I just never had the balls to pursue it. So yeah, I spent a couple of years saving up, and once I had, my plan was this: I wanted to save up until I had enough dough to fail for an entire year. That was the game plan, and eventually, yeah, I saved up enough cash and found the balls to get out. And I ended up coming to Saigon because I really love this place. You know, I was here back in 2009, so that's where the 9 in Bandit 9 comes from. And yeah, I've been here since 2014, second time around. Yeah.
Nice. And so, and was it difficult to start up a custom shop in Saigon? Was that, and, you know, I know you work with a variety of different artists and suppliers and craftsmen and so on. How did you put together
Yeah,
that network in the city?
it was complete luck, to be honest with you. It was really, it was just pure luck. So I came back here without much of a plan, to be honest. You know, I had a small place. I was trying to live small so I can, you know, focus all my attention on Bandit 9 and creating it. And I was just walking down the street looking for furniture, and I met a builder, you know, and one of the things I love about Vietnam is the friendliness of the people here. And so I was looking at his bikes and, you know, loving what he was doing. And he just asked me to sit down and have coffee at his place. That's how it all actually started, you know, from me just wandering the streets here. So he was my very first supplier. And yeah, that's how I got Bandit 9 started here in Saigon. And the network, all my suppliers are kind of the same, man. All happy accidents.
So that's your builder pro tip, is to rely on dumb luck, and it'll work out.
Yeah, pretty much. You need a lot of that.
I'm
Yeah,
sure a
yeah,
lot of
pretty
people out
much,
there will be
man.
really happy to hear that.
I've been
Don't worry about
insanely
planning.
lucky, man.
Just just walk around. You'll figure it out. Nice.
Really, yeah. I
Okay,
feel like
so
I feel like I've been really lucky, to be honest with you.
yeah.
A lot of things have it just lands on my lap.
Oh yeah.
Obviously I try to do my best and work really hard, but a lot of these opportunities just come by really dumb luck sometimes. Meeting builders and even meeting the guys here at Royal Enfield, who have been really supportive. We all met just by luck.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how did that luck then give rise to some of the bikes we're looking at here? I mean, you've made quite a few over the years, and they're all in a very, very unique style. They really stand out from the crowd of other custom builds out there.
Right.
I'd almost describe them as kind of more art than bikes somehow. What inspires your style? What leads you in this direction as a custom builder?
I think when I first started Bandit 9, I had an issue in general. Um, I guess I must have been watching like a lot of Blade Runner or Back to the Future. And I was a little bit upset that we weren't living in a world like that, you know? Um, in fact, at the time, and I would kind of say even today, there's a tendency to kind of look back and do retro. You know what I mean? And what I wanted to do with Bandit 9 is take a crazy leap forward, and just, whatever that we have, whatever that we can imagine, we do that one to one in reality. So that was the game plan. So that's why these bikes look kind of wacky like that.
Yeah. And something I
And
like about the work is that you're not going for high horsepower. You're not going for you know you're not focusing on the performance and the power of bikes. You're focusing on the forms, and quite a few of the bikes are quite low CC. Is that a function
yeah, yeah.
of your environment in Vietnam and that being the most prevalent type of bike, or how do you approach that choice?
It's a bit of both. So the thing about living in the East is we don't have, especially at the time when I started, we don't have a lot of options. You know what I mean? We don't have a bunch of parts that we can choose from. We don't even have shops that we can just walk in and buy, custom parts off of. So we really had to make do with what we had. And with these Honda Super Sports that you see, there's an abundance of them here. And it's kind of what makes Saigon cool. So I decided to use this Honda 67 Super Sport, as a platform to launch everything.
Nice. And that's obviously launched you into a couple different places as well. We're looking at some prominent museum collections here, as well as some showrooms, which is a bit unusual. I mean, sometimes you'll see
Yeah.
we see a custom bike in the window of a shop or something, in London or Tokyo or wherever.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
somehow your builds seem very appropriate somehow in these retail environments. What's led to these placements? Are you approaching them? Are they approaching you? How does that work and feed into Bandit 9 as a company?
Right. So when I first started, the biggest challenge was this. We were coming from Asia. And I know that sounds really bad. But back when I started in Beijing, there was no choice but to slap made in China. And this was back in 2011. And my game plan was to try and flip that script, you know? And it's the same thing that we have in Vietnam. There's a lot of trust issues, I would say, especially regarding quality or even that I'm going to deliver the product to them at the end of the day. So my answer to that was to get into these prestigious places. So I really did my best to create these out of this world motorcycles that will grab their attention. And we started off with the Mad Gallery in Geneva. I really had my eyes set on those guys. I told myself in the next 5 years, I'm going to have one of my pieces in there. And again, by luck, they called me to make a couple of pieces for them. See what I mean? It really is just
Yeah.
no luck.
Well, I mean, there's a certain
Uh,
amount of drive and focus there that seems to create its luck. You're creating things that obviously resonate with them, and so
yeah,
hopefully
yeah, and
that's
I think over time, people are starting to understand what we do. So with these crazy futuristic odd bikes, I think I told you a long time ago that we used to get hate mail, especially from diehard traditionalists, and I still do to this day. But I think
no kidding.
people are starting to come around, so especially these retail spaces, they're really liking what we do. So fortunately, I think last year we got into prestigious, I don't want to say department store. It's Le Bon Marché in Paris, and we got into one in Lane Crawford in Hong Kong, and the Arsenal. I don't know if you've heard of that in Macau,
Yep,
in this amazing space uh, designed by Zaha Hadid. So yeah,
brilliant. So, I mean,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
talking about these retail spaces. Many of them are luxury oriented, of course. And I know we've talked in the past about your inspirations being, watches. You're a watch guy. You love them. How does
yep.
that inspire your builds? Does that sort of philosophy of watchmaking and so on carry on into them? How are you creating that connection?
Yeah, I'm this passion for watches is basically was basically imbued by my dad. I've loved watches since I was kind of tiny. I love it's pretty crazy, man. All these watches don't have any computers. They're completely mechanical, and yet they can tell the time. They can tell you where the moon is. They have a date function, a day function, a power reserve function. It has a stopwatch. All into this tiny little device and without any computers. And I think a lot of the young folks nowadays don't really appreciate that for some crazy reason. They'd rather check the time on their phone. Okay, whatever. But for me, this kind of craftsmanship really matters. You know what I mean? And you can really feel, you can really feel it. In fact, you don't even have to touch it, and you can just tell that it's just well done. And I try to bring that into what I do.
Brilliant. Speaking of a bit of the old school here, our bike's not exactly the most modern and technological motorcycles in the world, and intentionally so. We like to keep it
Yeah,
simple and as you say, mechanical.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, when we started working on this project together, we started with one bike, and then through some happy accidents or luck, as the case
Yeah,
may be, we've ended up with two builds at the same time,
yeah,
uh, both on the
exactly.
UCE. We got
Hmm.
the GT here, 535, which then became Arthur, and
Uh-huh.
then we've got a classic here with the
Hmm.
UCE motor that became Merlin. How was it
Right.
working on two builds? Taking your style, applying it to these two very different motorcycles, but both had the same heart somehow. What was it like doing that at the same time?
Nerve-wracking because we had a bit of a deadline on us. I remember that they wanted to launch the bike within 3 months, I believe, and they
Yep,
were creating
that's
an
it.
event around it. And you guys were flying from the UK, and I had some guys flying in from India as well. So there was a lot of pressure to deliver and on time. So that was quite difficult. And two at the same time was even more interesting. And on top of that, we kind of went the opposite direction of what we normally do. We took a bit of a more classic approach to these motorcycles, to
Yeah.
respect what the engine is like, what the original piece is like. And again, taking inspiration from watches, we complicated it. You know what I mean? Where we spend a lot of time trying to hide uh, complications with our futuristic bikes. With these pieces, we kind of showed it all off. So a lot of things in the air at the same time. But it was fun, man. I hope you guys like what we've done.
Yeah, most definitely. And I was saying that it's really neat to see how they came out so differently. Like they both express your style. As you say, they're both maybe a bit more classic than quite a few of your other bikes. But
Mm.
they are also very, very different in their approach. And
Right, right,
both of
right.
them reflect the character of their base, somehow. And even
Yeah,
though when you're
absolutely.
looking at the motor, basically the same motor, you've created two very different motorcycles that still speak to the models that they came from. So that was really cool to see as well.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
I imagine it was
Cool, cool.
maybe difficult to keep yourself from sliding them together too much as you're working through at the same time.
But yeah, it was pretty challenging, man. One is a hardtail and another one is a cafe racer. And I remember just getting super confused about what we had to do and which parts had to go where at a certain stage. It was crazy complicated at the time. But, yeah, it was good. Oh, yeah,
So
this
speaking
thing.
about complication, could you walk us through your process a little bit? You're coming from a graphic design background, a marketing background. Um,
Right.
how do you approach the build process, and has that been informed at all by your training and history, or did you look at this as something completely different?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't have an engineering background or a mechanical background, and on top of that, I'm like three-dimensionally challenged. So I'm always thinking in 2D. I have a degree in graphic design, so I come from a print background where everything is kind of over flat surfaces. So that's how I usually design bikes, and most of the things that I do, I kind of like to tell myself that I like to be able to draw my bikes in almost like a single stroke without picking up your pen. So that's what I kind of tried to do here with the Merlin. So I did this bad boy in Photoshop. Um, and what I really, really want to do was have this triangular form. You know what I mean? And hide the frame as much as possible with the exhaust pipe. So it creates this illusion, that the frame is being supported by it. Um, Again, it's quite simple, as you can see from the void in the rear area. But I think when you take a look at the bike itself and all the little tiny details, you'll understand how the watch inspiration kicks in.
Nice. And so then, how do you go from the sketch to the real? What's you said you work with a number of suppliers and so on. How does that translate? Uh, what
Right,
what
right.
is your
So
interaction
I
with
have
them
a
to
team.
make it possible?
Yeah, I still have a team of guys that we're basically in charge of the frame and the fabrication of the metal. Exactly. So the first step is to create the concept in 2D. I already have the 3D in here, so it's really important for me to be there and give direction as we go. But my guys have kind of learned to navigate around my vagueness, so they understand what I'm really looking for. So as you can see from there, we're chopping up the frame. Yep, welding all the pieces. Yeah, so these guys are really good. Yeah, there's a bit of a jump there. But for Arthur, for example, this was really tough, man. The frame, especially, there were a lot of calculations. Fortunately, I didn't have to do any of that. But all the all the corners have been removed, if you can see. You know,
Yeah.
So that was quite difficult, and we did all of this by hand, which
And
is
Arthur's got quite a cool seat unit there as well. It's the frame. Normally, you'll have a tube running across underneath from the
that's right.
seat underneath tank and everything. You've completely removed that, separating the two forms, which I think is a really neat feature of the bike.
Yeah, and we kind of learned from architects how to do that. I feel like they call it parametric curves or something, where the curvature of the joints kind of support themselves as well. So that's how we were able to separate that seat unit from the rest of the body, which is something that we really
Yeah,
wanted to do. Yeah, we wanted the frame to be, a work of art on its own. So
yeah. No, definitely worked
these
out.
guys, yeah. So some of the parts there are also pretty interesting in how we made them. Some of the parts that we do are steel, some of them are aluminum, but these guys were made by sand casting. So what we did was we had to create um, positives first in wood, put it over sand. Once that mold was done, we pour liquid metal into these things, and that's what you get. It's pretty cool, but obviously they're a lot more refined on the real deal, so you won't see too many bumps. But it's
How
quite
did you
heavy.
come to that process? I mean, something like brake levers or clutch levers or so on. That's something you can get off the shelf pretty easily. Was it your intention going into the build to do this, or are these you make these for every build? Is this just something that's part of a Bandit 9 build, or is this something that was special for these builds?
It's something special for these builds. To be honest with you, again, we really are forced to make a lot of these parts, and I guess that's where the name really comes from. This Bandit. That was the idea. We're in a place where we don't have access to parts. We don't even have access to tools. So we have to make do with what we have, and that's how we have to innovate. 99% of the time, we're just forced to do it. So to answer
Real
you,
necessity is
yeah,
the mother of invention, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. It feels like a curse when we're working on it. It's a blessing when we're
I'm
done.
sure it's great when it works out.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
here we
yeah.
got a
It's
little
good.
bit of that watch sort of detail you're talking about. Are
Yeah,
these meters custom made as well? Is this another thing where you've gone from zero on them?
yeah. Pretty much. I mean, the internals of the speedometer is something that we definitely had to source. But the casing itself and the bezel that you see there, as well as the face and the dial and the actual hand of the speedometer, we had to make from zero. Um, and it looks simple, but it really isn't. It really isn't. Just disassembling the freaking speedometer itself is a pain in the butt, man. Um,
I'm sure.
but yeah,
I'm sure.
just getting these things together and finding a way to do it beautifully is quite tricky. Even now, I don't even know how to disassemble this thing.
Let's hope it never breaks.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean,
that's
talking
true.
about the craftsmanship and skills and making do is really interesting to us also because quite a few of our viewers and customers, of course, are in India, and there's a really strong
Mm.
history of craft there as well, particularly in metal.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
it's neat. Yeah, I think it's really cool to have that message of basically, you know, find the right people and figure out a way to do it if it's not available for you. Because
Yeah.
we run into some of the same
Absolutely.
problems there. It's I
Actually,
think something that anybody can do. It's just a matter of going and finding and doing it.
yeah. And again, yeah. This is. I'm really lucky, man. I don't know how to explain it to you, but Vietnam is incredibly rich uh, with
Mm.
craftsmen. So you'd be surprised that some of these parts they can do from a single sheet of metal, you know? So the easy way to do this thing would be to, let's say, fabricate the right side of the tank, and then the left side of the tank, and then the center, and just weld these things together, right? Not these guys. You know? So it's almost like origami, where they'll just fold into these crazy forms. And it's something
Wow.
which I've kind of, made a standard. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully from now on, we'll be able to do that with all our motorcycles. Less welding, just more forming into one single piece. And even the leather craftsmen here they're pretty insane. They can make shoes, they can make watch straps, they can make furniture. So a saddle is pretty freaking easy for them.
Nice.
No big deal.
No big deal at all.
Yeah.
So I know we've got Merlin behind you there.
Yes.
There. And unfortunately, we don't have Arthur with us. So I've put together a couple of pictures here. Can you just walk us through Arthur a little bit? What went into her? Some questions we got online were about your metal finishes, how that works out,
right.
and some questions about the suspension, so the straight horizontal rear suspension, and just take us through. Let us know what went into it.
Sure. So the motorcycles that we create are mostly in steel. There are very few parts that are made in aluminum. There's just something about steel and chroming it that just feels like quality. You know what I mean? You can really, without touching it, you can just feel the weight of it. And I don't know if that's a good thing, but I like it. The Arthur as well, the direction that we took there was, again, going back to the watch is to kind of show off the complications of the motorcycle, seeing all the little parts and all the little cables moving. So when somebody asks me about the suspension, for example, on the rear especially, how we're able to do it horizontally, that's through a series of brackets as well. And the reason we did it horizontally was to kind of show off that floating disconnected seat that we were talking about earlier. So it was important not to interrupt that. You know what I mean? With the rear forks. Yeah. And again, we're integrating a lot of sandcasted parts as well. You see how the pieces turned out? Quite smooth. And yeah.
And these are all chromed as well, or are these polished? Or
they're all chromed as well. I think the only thing that we did in aluminum was probably the foot pegs.
I got a picture of them in a little bit here.
Those guys were polished. So again, that's from leather craftsmen here. We've got an abundance of choices as well. It's pretty cool. So we've got Italian leather. I don't know how the hell we get that. And we've got local leather as well. It's pretty nice, man. It's pretty clean the way they work.
Yeah. There's that rear suspension
again, the rear suspension as well as the frame. Again, we put a lot of effort on the frame. It's pretty crazy. And we wanted to mimic the curvature as well with the exhaust pipes, as you can see there.
Yeah.
We chose a bit more of a... Yeah, we went old school. Yeah, because we love all the little working parts and all the little brackets and all the little cables moving around there for the drum brakes. So we thought that fit the aesthetic of the bike.
That's getting back to the mechanical complexity you like there.
Yeah, that's it, man. Even the springs on the suspension we added. Yeah, so this thing is made out of, what's it called? Aluminum that we just polished as well. Nice. Pretty tricky, man, I must say. It looks simple, but it's pretty hard to carve these things out. Yeah, that's good.
No doubt.
Interesting challenge, man.
Speaking of your other challenge, here we have Merlin as well. I'm noticing some similarities. So you may have already answered some of the questions there on Arthur.
Sure,
But do you
sure.
think you can give us a walk around, Merlin, and we can have a look
Sure,
see
let's do
at
that.
some of those details close up?
Absolutely.
Give us a second. We are connecting. And this is why Daryl likes mechanical complexity over digital complexity. Mechanical he can control, digital, bit of wizardry.
See what I mean? See what I mean? Unreliable. I don't know how I'd live without my phone though. Let me try that again. Apologies.
Not to worry. Just proves your point.
Cool.
So as we are waiting for the connection here, not to distract you from that very important activity, um, when we're looking at Merlin here, you talked about getting
Yeah.
that triangular form, going from
Yeah.
across the bike from the headlamp back through the rear axle and then back to the front of the bike again, and making
Yeah.
that silencer really appear like it was supporting the bike. Was How difficult was that to do? Obviously in a side view sketch, no problem, done. It's a couple seconds. How tricky was that to realize in the reel?
It's pretty tough, man. I gotta say, because again, everything is made by hand. So if it was just slightly off, the curvature, especially towards the frame, then that means the exhaust pipe would be sticking way out. It gets
Right.
worse as it travels back. So we really had to nail it
Yeah.
quite nicely, and that was pretty tricky. With these shots, by the way, what I really wanted to do was uh, flip the mirrors, but for legal purposes, being out on the road, we had to flip them up.
Gotcha.
So when
Yeah.
when you see the bike, actually, it's really how it's supposed to be. Sorry, let me just connect here one more time. Apologies,
Take your
everybody.
time.
How's
Remember,
that?
kids, stay away from digital.
Let's go back to rotary phones.
You'd like that, wouldn't
Oh
you?
man, yeah, I don't know what's up with me, man. I don't know why I'm against tech. Let me try it with one more time. Hmm.
Yeah, sorry about this, guys. We're just going to work through this little bit of Daryl's luck finally running out, and
Wow, thanks, man. This is it. I guess you're not gonna call me anymore.
yeah, I told you. I'm just gonna try to embarrass you through this whole thing. I've been pretty lenient so far.
You finally did it. Okay, last
Seemed like the right
one more
moment.
try. How's that? Is that working? Okay.
Yeah, so just as
Wow.
everybody's
Okay.
waiting there, we do apologize for this. We are just sending there a new link to join on. Trust us, this literally worked about a half hour ago, and
Yep.
as of course picked this moment
It
not
was
to.
perfect.
So it's something
It was
that
perfect.
as we're sorting that out, when we talk to a builder like Daryl about a project, it always starts as a conversation first. We'll talk to him because we really like his build style, and we think it matches with our bikes, and as you've heard him say, it's the mechanical. thing is really important for Bandit 9, and that's really important for us too. Getting a real metal, showing off the parts rather than trying to hide them are all things that we're really proud of at Royal Enfield. So when we're working with Daryl, finding those synergies was really important. And hallelujah, we're on. Daryl,
All
want
right.
to show up? I'm running out of things to say here.
All right, let's do this bad boy. All right,
Your turn to talk.
here we
So
go.
just walk us through it, man. Show us, yeah, from end to end. Show us that the details that you're talking about. Yeah, definitely seeing those mirrors where they should be.
Yeah, that's how we actually really wanted to do it. But again, when we were out on the road, we were politely asked to flip it back up.
That's
I hate
fortunate
rules.
you were just that. Yeah. I imagine there are quite a
So
few
here's
other
the
things on
close.
this that may not be entirely road legal.
We'll just hide that. Here we go. Here's the front end of the bike. Here's a POV. Vroom, vroom.
There we
And
go.
that's what the speedometer looks like. Hopefully you can see that pretty close. It's got
Yeah.
a really nice radial finish on it. I'm hoping you guys can see that, so that if you ever move the camera angles around, or if you look at it from a different angle, the metal shines differently. And we've added some Roman numerals on this bad boy. Moving a little bit back, here's the tank. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just quickly, before you move to the back there,
Sure.
the top jokes there are really a little work of sculptural art in and of themselves. Are
Oh,
those
yeah.
made from zero, or did you take something that already
Yeah,
existed,
yeah.
or is that in this actual nacelle that you've played with there? Or?
No, no, no. These are pretty special. They're. This is why building motorcycles takes forever. I could go all day trying to make all these parts individual and design them. But this is something that we really took a lot of time to create as well. Is that a better angle of it?
Yeah, it's looking really good.
Yeah. And by the way, because this is made of bronze, it's got a nice patina on it. So over time, the color will change.
Yeah, so the
And
bike
you can
ages naturally.
always, yeah, and you can always polish it back up to its original finish. That's what's cool. Hmm.
Brilliant. Oh, sorry for
That's what the
interrupting you
handles
there.
look like.
Continue on your journey.
There's the tank. Yeah, it's a pretty sleek looking guy, this thing. I remember this was a pain in the ass, this little cutout
Hmm.
to accommodate the shape of the tank, because we had this one continuous line all the way
Gotcha.
up, but we didn't have enough room, so we had to dodge that. But it's pretty cool. Small little touch there.
So
And this
how
thing,
much
in case you
time
guys
is
were
spent
wondering,
actually polishing out the chrome there?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How much time is actually spent polishing out the chrome?
A long freaking time, man. It takes a few rounds, actually.
Hmm.
So, first of all, it's made out of steel. We had to also make sure that it was dust free, which takes a long freaking time. And then
Huh.
we had to coat it with something first, I believe. There was like an initial bath, and then we dunked this whole thing into a chrome bath. So they'll stick it in a pool and then electrocute that thing, and this thing comes out. And it runs through another bath. Yeah, so it takes
Hmm.
several steps to get it like this. And then afterwards, of course, you might want to polish this bad boy by hand just to
Yeah.
keep it looking like that. This guy was freaking complicated as well. We were looking
Yeah.
at the suspension system of a Vespa. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you've ever looked at the underside of a Vespa seat, it's pretty crazy, man. It looks like a skeleton.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's how we got there. There we go.
And those are all individual springs holding that on?
It is with tiny little individual holes as well.
So
So
when
it's pretty
you
crazy.
come up with an idea like this, there it is, and
Yep.
just finding
Eh,
the springs of the right length. I mean, how is that a matter of you just walking around to shops? You getting them online? How do you even just source those little parts like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have to go to a market for this stuff. So it depends, man. It's pretty cool. Saigon's it got a lot of really cool stuff. Unfortunately, not everything is in the same store, so you gotta go to multiple shops to get these things. But there's a surplus shop of like it's really cool. It's like World War II stuff. So it's got a lot of military um, things for sale, like helmets, jackets,
Yeah,
boots. But also, there's a lot of different hardware there, like speedometers, airplane parts. Believe it or not, you know, gas
hmm.
masks. So I think that's where we found this thing, these
Neat.
individual springs. Uh, but they're pretty cool, man. And of
Yeah,
course,
it's a
the
really
seat
really standout part of the bike.
has its own little suspension system as well to smoothen the ride.
Just because you needed
Cool.
more springs.
That's it.
Nice. Let's see
Moving
that
back.
exhaust then.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Let's see that silencer run.
Right there, it is.
Yes, yeah.
One long piece that matches the shape of the frame. And there's the frame right there. Yep.
Now, I had
And
somebody
moving
asked
up.
as well online,
Sure.
does this use a battery, or are you relying entirely on the Kickstarter? Is it
It's got a
electric
battery.
start? Or?
It's got a battery. We hold that here in this funky little box. Um, it's a good question, to be honest, because I really, really wanted to keep as much of this empty, but we thought it was really important to just have the option. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Cool.
no, it's nice to have that convenience of the electric start as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's good. And moving along. There. That's the sandcast part.
Nice. No,
Cool.
that came out beautifully, man. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, I'm glad you guys like it. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
We
thank
have
you for
even
the
have
walk.
these little. Cool. Alrighty.
Parting shot there. Cool. Thanks, man.
That's it. Cool. Let me
That
have a
is
seat.
it. Thanks for hanging with us, everybody. And yeah, I think this is it's only our second time doing the live walk around, so we are still refining that process a
Cool.
little bit. Appreciate your patience there.
No worries.
But yeah, so I think it's been great to see both the bikes. Really awesome to see the walk around there of the Merlin. Before we sign off, is there any advice that you would give to an up and coming builder, somebody who thinks about it like you did, but hasn't taken the plunge yet? What would be your number one thing to get that person to make that jump and commit to the building as a career?
Um, my advice is always this: is if I think what you should do is try your best to save as much cash as you can and prepare for failure. Okay. And the reason I say that is because, there's a lot of advice out there where, go follow your passion, go, 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 which is fine. But in practice, I think it's really a good idea to have a foundation, a financial something, a net, a safety net that you can land on, because you want to make good decisions as you're building your motorcycle or your brand, and you don't want to have money constantly in your mind whenever you make decisions. You know what I mean? And at least from
Yeah.
experience, whenever I think about cash or how much money we can make, or save money or whatever it is, it's never a good decision. You know what I mean? It doesn't benefit the motorcycle. It doesn't benefit the buyer. It doesn't benefit you. So
Mm.
it's just, for me, I would really suggest, try to save some money, and just be prepared to kind of, lose all of it. So you got to love what you're doing. And yeah, just make really good decisions after you've got that net. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And from there you can be yourself, do exactly what you want to do. I think that's what the saving actually does for you, is it gives you freedom.
That's a great great bit of advice there. Preparedness equals freedom.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad
No,
to,
thank you.
and also thanks obviously to the Royal Enfield dealership there for hosting you. Really glad that could work out, so
Absolutely.
we could have Merlin in the background. And yeah, we'll be back next week with Thrive Motorcycles in Indonesia. And for now, we will leave you with showing of that wonderful film of these two bad boys in action.
Cool. Thanks, guys.